So tonight, as I said, we're talking about risk management and trading rules with a heavy focus on risk and what risk means. Our webinar is going to be about an hour. It depends on your questions. We may end early if you guys don't have a lot of questions. As we always start with, we just need to always remind you that anything I say is not to be construed as trading advice. We are not registered or authorized investment security advisors. Here's me. You probably know me by now. If not, there I am. Same face, slightly gussied up outfit in the picture. So 2 things that I really want to be able to accomplish by the end of tonight. One would help you better understand the nature of risk, and secondly, help you understand how to better manage risk in your trading. So that being said, as I said, this is not going to be a note-heavy type webinar. Really, we're just going to have some conversations on a number of topics that you see listed here. So let's start with the understanding of risk. What is it? We talk about risk all the time, right? Whether you're in PCT or you happen to be a Bear Bull Traders member, we talk about like the concept of R, capital R risk, right? That we talk about all the time. We say, well, what is R? Well, it's one risk unit. Which equates to the value that you're willing to risk on any given trade. But we just keep referring to risk as if we all understand and know what that is. So what is risk? Well, risk is really just the possibility of something bad happening, right? That's the dictionary definition of risk. If I break that down a little further, really what risk means then is it's the way you balance the reward you're trying to get against the chance of failure of achieving that reward, right? And when we're trading, obviously we are looking ideally to try and make the reward heavier than the risk. I mean, that's really the objective at the end of the day. We know that to trade, I hope you know that to trade, trading is at its core a risk-based endeavor, right? We are taking the chance that we can, with a managed risk profile, achieve something greater than the risk we're willing to undertake. So really what we're looking to do is to try and minimize the risk at any given trade instance and maximize the reward. So if we do it properly, we're really going to be able to effectively limit that risk while put ourselves in a position to achieve rewards that either hit our goal and or targets and or achieve a result that's far greater than what we might have anticipated. But when we talk about this, one of the things that always, that we tend to forget is that while we're looking at risk as something that we're looking to try to manage and control, risk always has an element of uncertainty, an element of chance to it. And if we, back up a second and look at the definition of risk, it's the possibility, like I said already, of something bad happening. But in more specific terms, risk involves uncertainty about the implications or the outcomes of any given activity, right? Usually that results in undesirable consequences. When we think of risk, we tend to think of negative things. It doesn't actually have to be, but that's generally how we define it in society, right? Now, we tend to use other terms as well that refer to risk, right? So if it's a good side, what do we talk about it, right? If it's a good risk, we tend to talk about chance or odds even, or luck, right? But those are all different terminology that we use to describe the same thing. It's a risk-based endeavor, risk that might be realized positively or negatively. The reality is in our life, there's risk in everything we do. And you'd think that because it's involved in pretty much every activity we undertake, that we'd be better at understanding it and better at managing it. The reality is we're not. We just aren't, right? So like I said earlier, being that trading is fundamentally a risk-based activity, it tends to follow, therefore, that managing risk or removing that uncertainty of risk is a fundamental way to improve our odds of success. So I want to, we're going to spend a little time here tonight talking about the risk because it's an important thing to understand at its core. We all have these beliefs that have been instilled in us since childhood about what risk is. Is risk good or bad? Is it something that should be sought out? Is it something that should be fought and overcome? Like we all have a different perception of risk and whether it's something that we want or don't want, whether it's good or bad. And there's no rights or wrongs in that, right? It's really, the right or wrong is really in how we manage it. And are we managing it in a way that's going to allow us to positively affect outcomes? Or does risk become something that we fear and therefore inhibits our ability to achieve those same positive outcomes? So I'm going to use a bunch of examples now because I want to start to reinstill this thing about risk, right? So when you go to a casino, we all understand they're called games of chance, right? At a casino. So meaning, you're undertaking some risk. But we've got casinos that we all, I trust, understand, make a lot of money. All right, but how do they do that when they are fundamentally engaging in risk-based activities, when they will let anybody, right? There's no filtering. If you've ever been to Las Vegas or Monaco or to Macau or, Atlantic City, anywhere, you know that they let anybody in. There's no filtering. So you could be any person with any skill, any outcome, any perspective on the games, and they will let you put down money, sometimes unlimited amounts of money. Sometimes they like to cap that. But at any table to undertake a game of chance. Well, why is that? Because they have turned risk into a business. In fact, they've turned it into such an effective business that on the Las Vegas Strip, every casino on average will make $634,000 a day in net profit, net revenue, I should say, from those that come to their casinos. So they know that if they manage their risk properly, they can make over $500,000 a day in effectively managing the risk. We're going to talk a little bit later about how they do that. But what I want to impress upon you is the casinos have taken risky activities and they've, computed it. They've managed it in such a way that they understand where their edge is and they know how to make money off of letting anybody plunk down their money and take a shot at it. And they know that at the end of the day, they will always come out on top. Another risk-based activity that it's part of our life that we just undertake that we often don't think about are lotteries, right? Lotteries offer this opportunity to get rich for $1 or $2 or $5 or whatever the heck a lottery ticket costs these days. They give you the chance to make millions, hundreds of millions sometimes, even up to $1 billion of some of the biggest lotteries that have happened in the U.S. And in October of 2018, the U.S.-based Mega Millions lottery reached a record $1.6 billion. $1.6 billion. And apparently off of that lottery alone, they made over $4 billion because so many people said, I've got to get me a ticket to that because they all, everybody wanted a ticket to that $1.6 billion lottery. But what's interesting to me is that the odds on that lottery of winning are about 1 in 302 million. So Dash, you want to run out and buy a ticket? You bet, go for it. But understand your odds specifically are 1 in 302,575,350. But you never know, right? You never know if you're going to win. But who always wins? Right? Those putting on the lottery. Because they know that the odds are the same. Whether the jackpot is 1 million or $1 billion, the odds are the same, right? So they understand what their payout likelihood is, but they also understand how many people are likely to buy a ticket, and they know they're always going to end up on top. They never sell fewer tickets than they give out in proceeds, right? The house will always win. But to give you an idea of just how, to me, I love this as an example of how we don't understand risk. Because we're all willing to drop a couple of bucks on a lottery ticket. Why not? Because as Dash says, you never know. My dad used to call, he worked for Statistics Canada. So he worked in stats. And he always said, lottery tickets are taxes on the mathematically disinclined. To give you an idea, your odds of going out when you go to buy that ticket, Dash, of getting hit by lightning, you have a 43,000 you have a 43,000 times greater chance of getting hit by lightning than winning that lottery. 43,225 to be exact. So you're saying there's a chance. Exactly. So yes, there is a chance. Oddly, your chances are 15 times more likely of being sainted, becoming a saint, than it is your chances of becoming a saint are about 1 in 20 million. But anyway, so the point is that we don't really understand risk because we're always willing to plunk down money in the lottery, despite the chances being basically infinitesimally small. One of the other examples I just wanted to share with you that I always like is that video games were a great example where risk, video game programmers had to come face to face with the fact that people don't understand risk. Most video games have elements of risk in them, right? Often there's prizes that come up in mystery boxes, or your chances of, running into a certain enemy, or that the enemy's strength is in a certain, odds. Almost all video games nowadays have modified risk parameters, meaning they actually make the chances of something happening more likely than it would be if it was pure chance. Because they found when people play video games, true odds of things happening was very frustrating to people, and the perception was that it happened less often than it should. They also modify the risk or the chances of things occurring in random sequences. So when you have pure randomizers, you could get the mega prize 10 times in a row, or you might not get it, after playing a game for like 8 months. So what they've done is most video games have modified randomizers where you will get, sort of bigger prizes or rewards more frequently than the random odds would actually suggest. Because again, people got frustrated because randomness doesn't appear random to us, right? We always like to make patterns out of things. And our desire to make patterns has us ineffectively assessing risk. So one of the things that I always like to talk about and to share is a little game. So I'll say right now, if you guys know the answer to this game, don't ruin it for others, right? Just go along with me here. But one of the classic risk problems is the Monty Hall problem. Monty Hall was a Canadian, I think it was actually a Canadian game show called Let's Make a Deal. And Let's Make a Deal was famous for after they did this crazy game show, they would have 3 doors, right? They'd have their winner up and they would say, I've got 3 doors. Behind one of the 3 doors is a new car. Behind the other 2 doors is a goat. I want you to pick a door, right? Pick any door and we'll see if you win the goat. All right, so James is picking door number 2. Well, right now, James has got a 33% chance of winning, right? It basically is a 1/3 chance. No matter which door you pick, right? You've got a 30% or 33% chance. So let's go with James's, he picked door 2. He's the first one in. So let's go with door number 2. So we're going to pick door number 2. Now, I'm going to play Monty Hall or the guest host, and I know where the car is. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to eliminate one of the doors, right? I'm going to knock out a door. Now, because I'm knocking out a door, I'm actually knocking out a door with a goat behind it. All right, but I'm going to eliminate a door. I'm going to eliminate door number 3. So I'm taking out door number 3. So that's going to leave you with 2 doors. So the question that comes to our risk now is, I want you to tell me, and we'll do it via a poll, should you keep door number 2 or should you switch to door number 1? Again, if you know the answer, pick the I know the answer so you don't ruin it for others, but I want to see, for those of you that don't know the answer to this problem, should you keep your door or should you switch to door number 1? So a lot of people have seen this problem before, it looks like, so they're not voting. I appreciate that. All right. So, interestingly, here's our responses. 45% of you said that you would stick with your door. 10% said that you will change doors, and almost half of you already know the answer to this problem. But what's interesting is, out of those of you that don't know the answer, 90% of you, right, said that you are going to stick with your door. And that's the general inclination for most people, right, is that you're going to stick with your door. The reality is, though, if you switched doors, you doubled your chances of winning. You're like, so most people, if you've never seen this problem before, it's just not intuitive. That if you switch doors, you double your chances of winning. So rather than go through a long mathematical proof, which we could, I will just say, look, here's a quick graph or a chart that shows you all of the options, right? No matter which door you picked, and no matter which door the prize is behind, the odds of switching and not switching, you can see basically you'd win twice as often if you switch doors. Look this up online. Look up the Monty Hall problem. If you don't believe me, go and check it out. But it's a great example of how our brains don't process risk as effectively as we'd like to think, right? So 90% of you said, I'm going to stick with my door. You would have actually cost yourself, 50% of odds. You would have halved your opportunity to have won. So how does this apply to trading? Well, I bet you can start thinking about how this applies to trading, right? When we are in a pressure cooker situation, our ability to assess risk is generally poor. It gets even worse when we're in a stress situation. And often we like to stick with the bet that we've made, right? Which often means what? What happens in trading then? You blow your stop loss, or you average down because you're going to stick with the bet. I made it. I think it's going to work, right? You make a bad decision by sticking with the bet longer than you should, which is why we strongly advocate stop loss rules that you create before you enter the trade. You have a risk, you understand the risk, you set that in place, and when the stock hits your risk parameter, whatever that is, you're out. Don't change your mind, right? Because you're probably going to change your mind by doubling down on your bet rather than making an actual fact-based decision, right? So I have other webinars where I talk about the process of sticking to your rules, but hopefully, I can start to impress upon you that you don't want to make a bet or you don't want to start making up rules in the middle of a trade, because we are bad at assessing risk. One of the other simple examples I always like to share is the coin toss. The coin toss is a great example of how we don't understand odds, right? If you flip a coin, we all know that when you flip a coin, there should be a 50-50 chance of the coin landing heads or tails, right? We get that. I doubt anybody here is going to dispute that. But when you start getting the law of big numbers, there is a common distribution of tosses that could occur. So this is a graph where somebody flipped a coin 10,000 times. So let's just say you flipped a coin 10,000 times, and it's going to land heads or tails a certain number of times. I'm going to put one single of these red crosses that you see on this chart for every, so like this, for example, right? This one red cross right here represents 10,000 flips. And I'm going to mark it. So when I flip this 10,000 times, somewhere around 5,050 times it landed heads and 4,950 times it landed tails, right? And I'm going to do this 100,000 times. So basically, I'm going to make 10 million coin flips. But I'm going to measure it every 10,000 coin flips. And what you're seeing on the graph then is a normal distribution of coin flips, right? If I do this 10,000 times, which is a big number, and I'm going to do it 100,000 iterations, I'm going to get this type of bell curve here, right? That has a normal distribution roughly between 4,800 and 5,200 flips. When yes, there's a lot that end up 50-50, right? Right at the middle. But look at how many end up at these sort of edge conditions. All right, let me take away my marks. Look at how many crosses there are clumped into these areas between 4,900 and 4,800 and 5,100 and 5,200. So what does that mean to us? It means the chances of, when you do law of big numbers, when you do 10,000 coin flips, 100,000 times or 10 million coin flips, there's actually relatively few that end up right at the 50-50 mark. So let's bring this closer to home. What does this mean to us in trading? Well, let me just do 32 flips, because we can think of 32 trades, right? 32 trades. I'm going to run my 32 flips in this case, right? Heads or tails, my only options here. I'm going to run it 50,000 times. And look what the distribution is, right? Once again, you get a big distribution that happens towards these edge conditions, right? So when I flip my coin, there are a non-zero number of times when I will get 32 heads in a row, and a non-zero number of times where I get 32 tails in a row when doing this 50,000 times. Right? Or I could get, a large distribution of between 22 and 32, or as you can see here, roughly 8 and 0. So again, what does this mean to us? Well, let me start translating this. So let's take out the coin flips and put it in trades. This means when you take a certain number of trades, right? While you may have a strategy that wins 50% of the time, it is possible, it's even plausible and statistically expected, you could win all 32 of them. You could also lose all 32 of them, right? It doesn't mean your strategy is broken, but I'm willing to bet if you had 32 losses in a row against your strategy, you're going to start questioning everything. Does my strategy work? Am I an idiot? Am I not made for trading? Has the market, changed? Does the world hate me? Right? If you've even had a string of half a dozen or a dozen losses in a row, you start to wonder, right? It feels familiar, John? It happens, right? But it's one of those to think about. It doesn't mean the world is broken. It can happen. Right? Even after, as Ricardo was saying, even after 10 trades, you start to wonder. But that fits very easily, right, within our distribution range where, you will get 10, well, we'll put it at the 10 conditions here, 10 trades or so that could go against you. And you'd still within like the bulk of the bell curve here. So you're right. The sample is small at 32 trades. That's why we recommend you do 100 or more trades. But the point is still the same. At 100 trades, you could get 40 that go against you. If you get 40 in a row, you're really going to be questioning things, aren't you? But it's not statistically improbable, right? It's within the realm of probabilities. That's what I want you to think about. So, risk is something that we undertake. It's there. It's inevitable. But it's about us understanding it and managing it and not making decisions on the fly that actually change the odds. So if you're doing your coin flip, back to that, right? If you start trying to weight the coin, well, okay, in this case, you might be able to give yourself better odds, but you can't weight the coin in trading. So you got to live with whatever odds you're being given out of the market. It's also equally dangerous if it starts going in your favor. You start getting 10, 12, 20 trades in a row that are working for you, you're going to start to think you're a god and you can't be beat. And often that leads to incaution, right? And making other types of errors in your trading. So when we look at risk and odds making, right? We've been dealing with risk for as long as we're humans. And we like to make reasons how we can control risk or not control risk, right? And there are things that come from all different religions and cultures around the world, whether it's the black cat being bad luck Walking under a ladder will bring you bad luck. Breaking a mirror brings 7 years bad luck in some cultures. Some cultures love to avoid the number 13 because it's bad luck. Friday the 13th we know is an especially bad day. But then we also have things that we use to try and change luck. A lucky rabbit's foot, or finding a penny and making a wish. Or in Greece, they have the eye, the lucky eye. Lucky horseshoes, right? Dream catchers, or that are supposed to bring luck. Finding a 4-leaf clover, right? The lucky number 7 in some cultures. The point is, if you think about this, these are all elements of us believing that there are things unrelated to activities that are happening that we can use to control the risk of a certain activity, right? So let's say you break a mirror and then that morning you go and you get into a car accident. If you believe that the breaking the mirror caused the car accident, you believe that your actions in breaking the mirror had an impact on your driving. Now, maybe it did because it upset you or because you believed it was going to happen. But is there a direct causation? I'll leave that up to you to decide, right? If you find a penny and you make a wish on the penny, and then that day something good happens at work, you might believe that that penny caused the luck. Did it? Well, I can't prove it or disprove it, but I would argue that it's dangerous to have this belief that there's unrelated elements of trading that, in trading that can cause luck in your trading, right? I like to play with the magic 8 ball, and we like to joke about this a lot because it's a reminder to me that there are elements that we choose to believe in or we like to think affects our trading that have nothing to do with it. The magic 8 ball, I know this will be heresy to some of you. It's not magical. It doesn't change my trading. It can't predict the future. But it's fun as a game to remind us, as long as you don't take it seriously. So, and I really do think, exactly, I know this is going to like resonate through the ages now. But it's one of those things that it's important for you to think about and to remind yourself of, because sometimes we get into a trade, and when you start hoping for the trade to work, or you start yelling at your computer screen or praying that it's going to happen, you know you're going down a bad path, right? Because you're no longer thinking rationally or logically about the trade. You're trusting on elements that probably have nothing to do with trading to try and bring you luck, which is just frankly dangerous. So let me get off that for a second. Let's bring it back to some facts, okay? So I provided you this definition earlier, but let's break it down, right? There's actually a mathematical formula behind risk that businesses like to use. And if you've ever been in a business setting where you've done risk assessments, often they use this type of formula, where it's the probability of the risk of an event occurring multiplied by the impact if it does occur. So in trading terms, let me change the probability into the likelihood of a trade failing, right? That's what that first part of the formula means, which essentially is the failure percentage of your strategy, right? That's the probability of the event occurring, because risk happens when the event fails in this case, right? And failure is what percentage of your trade is, failure. So if your trade works 60% of the time, you're going to have a 40% probability you're going to want to use here in this formula, right? And then what you're going to do is you're going to look at the impact. Well, what's the impact if it occurs? Well, that completely depends on, whoa, really big pen, sorry. That completely depends on, right, the risk on your trade. So if you have a $20 risk, well, the impact if it occurs is $20. If you have a $100 risk, well, then that's your impact. Right? We can define the impact well, and we can actually define the probability. So if I bring this back to trading, let's just update the formula then a little bit, right? For a trading perspective, and your trading risk is defined to the failure percentage of your strategy multiplied by the max loss in the trade. Now, this is a great formula, and we actually advise people use it, but I want you to be aware of some of the inherent risks in this formula because it's simplistic. Right? Because it assumes that you have 100% ability to execute effectively against your strategy, meaning you're not making execution errors. It also assumes, right, that there's commonality in the way the market moves against your strategy, that you don't have instrument failure or other things, right? For instance, that you don't blow your max loss, because the formula goes out the window if you defined a $20 loss and you find yourself down $30, right? You've just broken your whole risk parameter. And now your risk is essentially unknown and potentially unlimited. So we have to be aware of these things, right? So when you're thinking a formula is good, I think you should use it, but you've got to be aware there's challenges or there's risks to your strategy, that some of which you can control and some of which you can't. So we're going to spend the balance of this webinar talking about specifically, so what do we do about it? If you now maybe understand risk a little bit more, and I don't want to scare you, risk, I just want you to know that risk is there. You can't eliminate it and you can't control it, but we can manage elements of risk. So to do that, by the way, most prop firms, so P Capital Trading is a proprietary trading firm, or a prop firm, as they're often referred to. And there are often formulas and ways that prop firms like to use to manage risk. These are 5 examples of terms that you may have heard or that you may not have heard, right? The Sharpe ratio or the Sortino ratio. There's, the VAR, value at risk. There's the pain to gain or gain to pain ratio, the GPR. I'm not going to go into those. I just wanted to present you these terms at some point in this webinar. If you want them, go look them up. They're very mathematical, and they're very good at specific things and very bad at other things. My personal opinion is all of these formulas are only good if you've got an extremely mature risk management process that doesn't allow for manual failures, right? Most prop firms work very hard to eliminate trader failure. That's why they've got risk controls. They've got oversight. They've got risk managers in place. They've got trade overviews, right? There's all sorts of things they put in place to make sure while they allow you to trade, it's within extremely strict risk parameters, and it clamps down as soon as you break any one of the multitude of risk parameters they put in place. Most of these risk performance measures really just measure against the risk parameters. So the reason why I'm not going to spend any more time on these specifically, because your first goal, your first challenge is trade within, define risk parameters that make sense to you, and then trade within them without failure. Most of us spend our entire careers trying to do that. And if you're trying to spend your entire trading career to do that, then these measurements, frankly, are less meaningful. But there are things you can do to manage risk. Risk, I always break into four different categories, right? You can reduce risk, you can transfer risk, you can avoid risk, or you can just accept risk. All of these are valid risk management strategies. Today, we're only going to talk about 3 of them, because the transference of risk is something that you can't do as a trader, as an individual trader. Now, can anybody think of a way you could transfer risk in trading? Algos? That doesn't really transfer risk, right? Hedging doesn't transfer it either, I would argue, because you're not giving the risk to someone else. That's a way to manage risk or to reduce it, right? Transferring risk would be being a trader in a prop trading firm, right? Because you're actually transferring the risk of loss to the trading firm. If you're a prop trader, what happens is you get a percentage of the proceeds and the house takes the risk on your loss. And that's why you give up a percentage of your proceeds, because they provide the capital. Let's say you get 50% of the returns or 35% of the returns. The reason why the house gets 65% of all the money you win is because they take 100% of the risk, right? Your only risk on the downside on a prop trading firm usually is they fire you, right? So that's a way to transfer risk. That's the main way you would transfer risk, is go work for a prop trading firm. Some of you may want to work for Peak Capital because you can transfer that risk element, right? That's a valid strategy. But it's not what we're going to focus at here, because you can't train somebody in that. That's just something that's undertaken by trading with someone else's money. I mean, you could transfer risk, by the way, by borrowing somebody's money and trading with that as well. I'm not recommending you do that. I'm not an investment advisor. Don't do that. But I'm just saying it's a strategy. So let's look at the other three, right? Accepting, reducing, and avoiding risk. Well, how do you accept risk? Well, you accept risk as soon as you enter the markets, right? But understanding what the stock will do by assessing the markets and better understanding them is a way you accept that risk, right? Ignorance to what the markets are doing, what the industry segment that you're trading in is doing, what the news is on the stock, right? All of those, to me, those are ignorance statements that doesn't have you actually accepting the risk. Accepting doesn't mean you just ignore it. It means you understand it, and you understand the risk as well as you can, knowing what the general attitude in the markets are, what the macroeconomic environment is, understanding if there's news against that. That helps you accept the risk, because you can better assess, am I taking a good risk on this trade or not? And I hope this makes sense to you, because I know I've had a lot of questions on this in the past. And again, I think it's extremely important that you say, like, let me give you an example. If we had a stock, like biotechs are famous for this, right? A biotech could be going up for months and months and months and months, and then one morning they release information that says their phase 3 trial just failed. I'm just pulling out my sheet here. NKTR, great example. Look at the chart at NKTR. They announced their phase 3 trial on their, I think it was a skin cancer drug, failed. Look what happened to the stock today. So if you were looking to go long in that and you didn't bother to look at the news and you looked, oh my God, it's down 50% or something before the market opened, this is a great chance for a long, because look at how discounted it is. You're not doing a good job of accepting the risk because you don't understand the risk. You're probably taking on more risk in taking that long than you truly understand. So that's why informing yourself against the risk is a way of accepting it, because you now understand it, so you can factor it into your trading profile. Reducing the risk, right? Well, you reduce the risk by implementing tactics that allow you to eliminate some risk from your trading. Some examples of that are, well, effectively, the effectiveness of your strategies, knowing how effective your strategy is, right? Is this strategy likely to win 50% of the time, 60, 70, 80? If you know that, that's a tactic you can use to reduce the risk on your trade, because you can focus on strategies that give you an appropriate risk profile. Managing how much you're willing to risk per trade reduces the risk, right? I mean, to me, that's a clear reduction of risk. I'm not risking $200 on this trade. I'm risking 100. Or I'm not risking 50. I'm risking 20. I've effectively reduced my risk by limiting how much I'm willing to risk. No matter what happens, $20, that's my limit. I'm out. See you later, right? Didn't work out. That's okay. The other one is making sure your tools and processes are as robust as possible. Here I'm talking some of the mechanics, right? Have a good trading setup, a trading rig. Make sure you've got strong internet. Do you have a backup to internet? Do you know how to access your account if your main internet goes down? That's all ways you reduce your technical risk, right? The technological risk. Then you have processes that allow you to assess risk in a trade. Does my trading strategy have a process by which I can assess when the risk is acceptable or not? Does my trading strategy have a process that I can implement to say, well, I know when it's going well, what I do? Do I get out at a fixed R level? Do I get out at a technical level? Do I, you have to know these things. That's a process to reduce risk. Not only, and by the way, remember when I defined risk? We often define risk as loss. It doesn't have to be. Risk can be a good thing. What's my risk of getting out of this trade at this profit and not getting a better profit, right? Again, you reduce making errors in that by having a strong strategy that you can then measure over time to say, this is the right level at which I should be making decisions. And avoiding risk can be done based on your execution, right? You avoid risk by Well, by not deviating from your strategies, right? By you avoid risk by sticking to your stop loss and not moving away from it. And then there's partialing, right? That you can use to avoid risk as well. So I often put these in, you have to accept the risk that the markets present to you. You can reduce it through your tactics, and your execution is what allows you to avoid unnecessary risk. And we have to think about that, right? There is necessary risk in entering a trade, which is why the necessary risk is the stuff, right, we want to accept and reduce. The unnecessary risk is the stuff we want to avoid. Unnecessary risk is always self-inflicted. Like I have written here, not sticking to your stop losses, deviating from your strategies. That's all avoidable risk. So this brings us to our trading rules, right? And I've already mentioned it. You need a strategy that incorporates rules, process sets that tell you what to do when risk is incurred or when risk presents itself, right? Then if that is predefined, you're going to be able to execute against those rules. Why is this important? Because you want to be able to create a set of repeatable metrics that you can use to manage and analyze your trades. If you make decisions on the fly, right? So if you go from your strategy to the execution phase, making decisions on the fly, you're not executing consistently, which means your data set is going to be null and void. It's going to be an illogical data set because you will not have executed in a consistent way to get data that you can then assess to create relevance. So I strongly encourage you to create a strategy that allows you to execute the same way each time, good or ill, right? Whether the trade wins or loses is irrelevant for your ability to get data. What you want is data, wins and losses. As long as the execution is consistent, then you can get a good, strong data set that you can assess and determine whether this is something that you can leverage over the long term to make a profitable trading approach or trading strategy. There's lots of quotes on risk and risk management. I do love the fact that, an Eisenhower quote, plans are nothing but planning is everything. Because we know as soon as we go into the market's not going to do what we want it to, or rarely does it. But you have to have a strategy that at least anticipates the major probable outcomes so that you know what to do without having to make that decision in the heat of the moment. Because hopefully, like we proved a little bit earlier, you're not good at making decisions in the heat of the moment. So you want to build that into your strategy so that you can effectively deliver, you can effectively execute. Your job as a fund manager, and frankly, I use the term fund manager on purpose here. Fund manager is what people in a prop trading firm are often called. But even if your fund is your personal money, you're your own fund manager. Unfortunately, you're also your own risk manager, right? Your own transaction manager, and your own coach. But I really want to suggest to you that as a fund manager, your job is to establish a robust tool and process set, determine what your tactics are, study and analyze the markets, pick your target stocks, and then you essentially, hand it over to the trading part of you to execute flawlessly. Your job as a trader is simply to execute flawlessly, right? The fund manager needs to do all the other things. And yes, I understand I'm putting hats on and taking them off on you as the same person. But I think it helps for you to think that way, right? The fund manager does a lot of work. The trader, the person who pushes the buttons when the opening bell rings and you make trading decisions, their sole job is to execute as flawlessly as they possibly can. That's their only job. It is not to make decisions. It is not to figure out what the markets are doing. It is not to determine tactics and approaches. It's to find a setup and a situation that matches your defined strategies, apply the process set that your strategy has already outlined, and execute. That's what you do as a trader. And if you can do that effectively as a fund manager, you can then know what your edge is. So that brings us back to a couple of points. So what is your edge? How do you know what your edge is? We talk about that a lot too. And John just gave us a talk the other day about your edge and knowing what that is. So let's go back to the casino. This casino that, remember I said, makes a business out of risk. Well, how do they do that? How do they make $634,000 a day consistently every day on games of chance? Because they know what their edge is, right? Here is the Las Vegas casino's edge on each one of these games. So they know that over the long run, blackjack. So for every $1 million that people plunk down on the table of blackjack, the house will get to keep 1 to 2% of that $1 million, right? So that's 10 to 20,000. So a lot of money flows through and past the table. Most of it they're giving back out. But they know for every $1 million, they're keeping 10 to 20 grand. Craps, the odds are up. Look at Keno and slots. I mean, they know. You want to play Keno? The house loves it. Casinos love it. Go for it. Play Keno all you want because they know they're keeping 20 to 40% of your money. Now, I don't know if you caught in the news recently, Las Vegas casinos have decided that they are adding 000, for example, right? On the roulette wheel, you've got the 0, you've got the 00. Now they're going to add a 000. Well, the house edge on a wheel with a 0 is 2.8%. The house edge on a wheel with 00 is 5.2%. So I can only assume their edge is going up to about 8%, right? On a wheel with 000. Think of how much better that is for the house, right? It's only a 2.8% increase, but for them, that's a 50% jump in revenues on roulette. Blackjack, typical payouts on blackjack, a good on actually getting blackjack is 3 to 2. A lot of Vegas casinos are moving to 6 to 5. This actually, believe it or not, this like triples their odds, their rake, if you will, on a blackjack. So my point is the casinos know their edge, and their edge isn't anything fancy, right? It's just knowing the odds of the games better than the people playing, so they can convince people to drop millions of dollars. They'll bring you alcohol for free, right? Why? Because they know that it's cheaper for them to get you drunk and get you betting more than it is to have you not play. Your edge in trading doesn't have to be anything fancy. You know what your edge could be? Your edge could be knowing your trade book better than anyone else on the planet and executing. Oh, is it 7.69? There you go, John. Thanks for finding. I couldn't find that earlier in a quick search. But your edge could just be knowing your strategy better than anyone and executing without fail. That could be your edge in the market. Your edge could be your strategy itself, but you won't execute the edge. Sorry, you won't achieve the edge unless you execute flawlessly. So think like the casino. I want you to be the casino. I want you to think about how you're going to execute your strategy in the markets so that you can most effectively rake out all that money that's coming in. Most of it is going to flow right through your fingers, just like at a casino table. But you don't care, because if you can execute your strategy enough times, right, over enough trading days, you should be able to win in the long run. The challenge is, though, right, this is why casinos have so much, they watch their blackjack dealers tighter than they watch the people playing. Why? Because look at their edge. Their edge is razor thin here. So they know they need blackjack dealers to execute flawlessly. The blackjack dealer is like the trader. So coming back to my analogy, remember I said you're a fund manager? Because you have to do all sorts of things like the casino, right? The casino's got to set up the environment, manage the room, monitor the situation, provide the cash and the capital, blah, 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 all the stuff. That's exactly what you do as a fund manager. As a trader, all you do is execute. The blackjack dealer, who's the tip of the spear here on this, their job is, and the guy at the roulette table, their job is just to execute to the rules. They don't make decisions, right? They don't make judgment calls. If there's a judgment call to be made, what happens? They call someone higher up, right? They call a pit boss, or they call out to the floor manager. They don't make decisions. You as a trader, don't make decisions. Be the casino. Figure out how you implement that model. The trade book we're providing you is where you encapsulate that. That's your rule book. That's your guidebook. It's your Bible. That's where you put all of the rules by which you're going to trade. Right? That's the key thing that you need to use. So essentially, you as a fund manager are handing your trade book to you as a trader and saying, this is what you do. I don't want you to make decisions. Don't try and outsmart the market. You follow these rules. That's what you do. That's how you manage risk. That's how you're effective. That's how you be the casino in trading. So specifically here, and this is, I think, my last slide, there's a number of questions that I wasn't going to read to you in detail. I just wanted, it's my second last slide. I have a summary one. But that I want you to ask yourself when you're thinking about managing risk. This list of questions, you can either take a screenshot, or it should also be posted in the documents, the document folder here right in the room. Let me see. I'm trying to find it. I didn't check before the, my apologies. Should be in there. If you guys could find it, that's great. If not, I'll repost it. Oh, there it is. It's under the images, risk management and trading rules, questions. So it's there for you anyways, or Paul just posted it. But the key thing is these are things that I want you to think about asking yourself. You should take a look at your strategy, sit back, be your own fund manager and say, all right, the questions like, what causes me to deviate from my strategies? Fear, panic, are my rules not good enough? Do they not apply to all situations? All right, then what do I do to change that, right? Am I prepared for every trade? If not, what more must I do to make sure I'm prepared to take the trades I want to? Do I know when to execute my strategies and when not to trade? If your strategy doesn't tell you when not to take it, I would argue your strategy is not complete. Take a fresh look at your trade book. Make sure your strategy at least equally, if not more so, focuses on when you do not take this trade as to when you do take it. I like to use John. John is a great example here. John trades high of day breaks. He has over time trained himself to know when something just doesn't look good. He knows better when not to take a trade than when to take a trade. So he clearly has that knowledge, that gut feel sometimes it comes down to, but that's a gut feel earned through experience to say, no, I'm not going to take this. Often what happens is he will take a trade when that gut feel just is not present. I don't know if this is going to work or not, but it looks good. I'm jumping in. I've had to learn to do that. For those of you who know me, know that I had to have this sign printed because I am an over-analyst, right? I can give you a million reasons why not to take the trade. So what I've learned to do is if I've got clear violations of my rules, I won't take the trade. If I can't find the violation, but I just have an uneasy feeling in my stomach, that probably means take the damn trade because it's actually probably a good trade. I just can't find an excuse not to take it. And often the ones I feel the least comfortable with end up being my best trades. So ask yourself these questions. They will help. They will help you, I think, manage your risk and either reduce the things you can reduce or avoid the avoidable risk elements. So in summary, right, hopefully I have impressed upon you enough. Don't make snap decisions because you're not good. The route to excellent trading is through flawless execution or as close as you can get, right? Try not to make mistakes. Excuse me. That's rule number one. And last thing is to make sure that all of the stuff that you learn and that you want to execute upon, it needs to be encapsulated in your trade book where your strategies are and your procedures should be outlined as to how you then take and manage a trade. All right, so that is my presentation on risk. I know I've missed some comments, but I don't think I missed any questions. Are there any questions I can help with? Ricardo, you made a comment earlier when you said giving powers to your broker to only let you trade a percentage of your buying power or cut once you're max loss. That would be a way to avoid, that's risk avoidance, I would suggest. because you're avoiding unnecessary risk by giving someone the ability to cut your losses. So that isn't, but that is not transferring risk if that's what you're implying. But that would be my definition of it. Trading trauma. So Starbucks, this is an interesting point. Trading trauma keeps you from taking trades that set up. I think we all have an element of trauma. I was talking in the Bear Bulls room earlier today about a trade I failed to take on CCL that turned out to be probably the best trade of the day that I'd found, but I didn't take it. And you're right. That's why even with, I will say, my many years of experience, I've been trading for over 20 years, day trading full time for almost 5 now. And I still miss things because I don't flawlessly execute against my strategies. I know my strategies. I know they work. In fact, as I was showing stats earlier today, I can show you statistically how my personal strategies, I don't have it open anymore, but work over, 75% of the time over the last 4 years. I've got 4.5 years of data that prove that. And yet I still fail to take the trades. So, it's a constant battle. It's just one of those things that we all have to assess. Let me share that with you because I was doing it in the room. So I have a spreadsheet. I don't want to show you all of the excerpt of my spreadsheet here, but where I take the number of trades, I updated it this weekend, and I can go back, right? I can go back here all the way back to September 2017. That's when I started trading live, right? So I've got data in my spreadsheet that allows me to go back and look that far back. And I've set myself up a simple parameter that says, take any day, I can assess my winning and losing trades. And it's a great number. So let me go back 1st of January 2020. So if I take the last couple of years of trading, like I'm a 74.7% winner the way I've been trading over the last, 2.5 years. So, but, it doesn't mean that I will still execute flawlessly. I still make mistakes. Despite the overwhelming evidence, you'd think 4,000 trades later, I would still be convinced, take the trades because 3 out of 4 times I'm going to win. I still fail, right? I still fail at times to take the trade. So anyways, I tell you that hopefully is just, it's always a battle. We always have things that we need to focus on. And, it's just one of those battles we have to fight. I mean, look at my winning days, 92%. Anyways. All right. Any other questions? What are you saying to yourself when you prepare to get into a trade? Well, Doug, I've got my smart trading methodology is basically what I run through. I've got a whole checklist that I go through that allows me to assess, is it a good trade or not? And then it's all based on the procedures I have within my strategy set. So it's basically just a set of rules. So when I'm getting into a trade, the things I normally just ask myself, and I do this ahead of the decision to get in or not. Is it a good trade? Does it meet my rules? Yes, no, yes, yes, no. And then if it says yes enough times, then bang, you hit the button and you should enter the trade. Again, that's the theory. The practice is I tend to, here was something I was sharing just to give you guys an idea. I am so specific on my trades. So I'm just going to show you this, not to brag, but this is my win rate for this month. It's terrifying, frankly. So this month I've taken 25 trades. I've won on every one. But there's a big downside, right? That looks great. The problem is I've cost myself a ton of money because I've failed to take many, many trades that I should have. I am now overly critical on my trades, and I've cost myself lots of opportunity. So which means I'm not doing a good job of managing my risk because I'm not maximizing my trade opportunity. So anyways, it's food for thought. But when I get into a trade, the only thing I'm trying to minimize the number of decisions, because I find I can get into analysis paralysis, and then I will always find a reason not to take the trade. So I try and answer all the questions up front. So when it comes time to execute, I really just say, at this point, like, there's nothing wrong with it. Just take the damn trade. That's really what I'm telling myself most of the time. Just take the damn trade. On CCL, I said, just take the damn trade. But I found an excuse because it wasn't moving much. And I thought, the risk it was a really tight risk. It was like a 5-cent risk, and I was like, I'm not sure if it can make 2R, which would be 10 cents. And like, it was foolish. It was there on the chart. Anyways, it's one of those things. I talked myself out of it. So Doug, and that's the problem that most people have, is that they tend to overtrade. I've gone the other route, right? Because I am so afraid of risk and I'm so risk adverse that I tend to undertrade, which, so again, this looks great, but it's a symptom of my personal trading monkey, right? The monkey on my back, which is I undertrade. So yeah, I've got, a winning rate, but think of this. I have been in the market. I get into the market an hour before they open. So 7.5 hours a day for what? We've had 2 weeks trading now, so let's say at least 10 trading days, and I've only taken 25 trades in 10 days. It's 2.5 trades a day. Oh no, sorry, it's only 7 trading days. So there you go. How's that? Anyways, so it's just I'm not trading enough, but that's my own problem. But again, it hopefully comes back to the point. All right, guys, I don't see more questions. So thank you so much for joining here tonight. Thank you, John, for sticking it out and recording. I appreciate all of you being a member at PCT here and part of the boot camp. If you have questions about anything, we're here to help. So don't be shy. Don't be afraid to ask. We're happy to help. And you can see my email here. You should know it by now if you're in my team. Even if you're not in my group, I'm happy to answer questions, just like John is happy to answer questions for anybody on my team, especially if you have strategy-specific questions that we can help with. So with that, have a great night, everybody, and we will talk to you later. Take care.